5,
4,
3,
2,
1. Hi, Tribe. I'm Versavia.
and I'm Evelyn.
And you're listening to Objectively Typed, the podcast where we explore the objective personality system. Today, we have a special guest. We have Shannon Renee of the Objective Personality System.
Yeah.
One of the creators. Hi, Shannon.
Hi. It's great to be here.
We're really excited to have you. So we wanted to, there's lots of interviews out there of people interviewing you or people interviewing Dave, and most of it is about the system. And for good reason. You guys created this really interesting, great system. We wanted to get to know you a little more on a personal level, like kind of how you got to where you are today. What's your journey been like? What's your alpha journey been like? And just kind of get to know you as a person.
Yep. Oh, it's really cool. Really, really cool. Great. Yeah. Should I just start from the beginning, I guess, then?
Yeah.
Yes. So
go ahead. And we may interrupt you with questions or anything, but yeah, go ahead.
Born on a cool summer day.
Right. Yeah, right.
Born on a Thursday.
I guess it would be starting with just kind of, I guess, where my first interaction with personality would have been. Like when I had no interest in personality, none whatsoever. In fact, when I went to college, I had to take a whole bunch of like psychology classes and stuff. And like, I remember at the time having find out I had like just 10 courses of psychology because of whatever my major was. It was like interdisciplinary, art oriented. And I remember crying and being like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. I hate personality stuff.
Wow.
At the time, so it's like, I really just had absolutely no interest. And of course the classes were interesting, but, I didn't care about this side of the world. I was just way all in on the art game, just anything art oriented, I was one of those weirdos. So that whole
were you
realm. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Were you like hating the psych requirements and stuff because it was taking you away from art, which is where you wanted to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I I'm sensory. I was not interested in diving deep inside the human mind. It just was not something that I shouldn't say that, not necessarily. It felt very colorless. I don't know how else to explain it, but like, it just felt very dry. It felt very like non-interesting at the time. Because it was very like Freud this, and it's just like, yeah. And of course, once I did the classes, it was fascinating. It was very interesting. I loved it. But the first time I ever experienced, even Myers-Briggs was when I went to my first job, and they had me take like strengths finders, and oddly enough, they actually typed me as an ENTJ, and they gave me the packet and all this stuff. And I was like, this is not me. Like, it was all written. I was like, you like to be the guy in charge and the one bullying everybody. And I was like, no, not me. Like, it was so foreign. It was just very, very foreign. I was just like, nope, that doesn't relate. Of course I said the same
resonate.
Thing. It doesn't resonate. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It said the same thing, and I just tossed it. Like, I just was completely not interested.
Yeah.
All it meant to me is, please don't not hire me, because they were like, you're overqualified. I'm like, please just hire me. I promise I'll be good. I don't want to bully anybody.
That's so funny. You hear about that. Like, I hear about, companies doing those Myers-Briggs tests. And so I've never actually experienced it. Like, at my professional jobs, I was in high school when they gave me one, and they said I was an INTJ, and who doesn't want to be an INTJ?
Right. So there you go.
Sure. Awesome.
Mastermind. That's me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. My boss was, he had to be an ENFJ. He was way into like, I want to know all about you, and let me have your profile, that kind of stuff. So that was like the first of it. And then, Dave and I were friends. He was actually friends with my ex-husband. They were like buddies in college kind of thing. So that's how I met Dave. I met him through him. And just, at the time, we literally called him like Crazy Dave. He was so out there. He was just very, very out there.
Illuminati.
I have seen his older YouTube videos.
You have?
I
there's one.
Shared them with some people.
Yeah, there were one or two that surfaced on the Facebook group where Dave had longer hair, and it was
that might have been me.
Was it?
That's so good.
It was great.
Me being Arrow, I loved it. I was like, this is amazing.
Right. Yeah, he had some videos where like he would talk about his machetes and stuff. I don't know if that's the one that has like he talked about his RC
That
stuff.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, this was one of the older RC ones. But
Okay, there you go.
But it was
So,
still like
just-
much more crazy than the Dave that we get now.
Right.
It was much more like,
Yes.
but it was hilarious. It was so funny. I love it.
Yeah, he of course he was like hyper too, so he had to like play blast energy, just hyper. He would come in and he'd be like obsessed about one thing, and he would show us his packets. He had these like packets that he would show everybody about like dinosaurs and just anyway, that was my interaction with Dave. And so like, you know, we basically kind of like went our own separate ways.
You guys were in SoCal? Or no?
Yeah,
we were in
in
SoCal.
Southern California. Yeah.
Okay.
I was in Burbank area at the time, Pasadena, Burbank area. And I was a wedding photographer. Like after I had kind of, you know, gone through college, gone through a few more jobs, stuff like that, I became a wedding photographer and I was obsessed with that. That was like my thing. I had my own business and I did it for about a decade. And I had realized like I hated doing the blasting side of it. I was really bad at the marketing side. I hated talking. I didn't want to talk at all. I just wanted like, here's my pretty pictures, hire me. And like, as soon as I got the brides to come to me, they would instantly hire me. But like, I didn't like playing the game. And at that time, Dave was doing the RC stuff and he had millions of views on YouTube with his RC channel. So my ex-husband at the time, I was like, I don't want to do the marketing. You start seeing if you can play the marketing game. He's like, I know, I'll call Dave. So that's basically where that kind of like, we came back around and he started helping me with my business. And then it was just like, you know, it was like talking to your own, it was weird. It was like talking to your own brain outside of your brain. That's what it felt like talking to him. Just as like, if you could think of the unconscious part of your brain coming back around and talking to you, it felt very weird. Like our conversations were very weird because we're exact opposites.
Right. Well, and you guys have the same axes, right? You have the same functions.
Yeah.
So you're speaking the same language, but he's speaking the language that is sort of lost to you, and you're speaking the part that's lost to him. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
You're fascinated with your demons, which is the other saviors.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So it was weird. It was a very like unconscious thing. And at the time we were both Christians and I was married, and it was just, I didn't think anything of it. I was so unconscious of my own FI, had no idea what my values were, you know, and of course, you know, fast forward, we basically realized like, okay, I want to work with you. I want to go up there, be with you. And at that time, our marriages started falling apart, you know, simultaneously, stuff like that. And that got to the point where I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do on this planet. I just want to work with you. You know, it was just, I just want to work with you. That's all I know. I want to work with you. I don't care what it's about. You know, and even more so than the photography stuff, because at that time when I was talking to Dave, he was like, by the way, the whole photography industry is going to start getting harder and harder and harder. And I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah.
God damn that NI.
I know. He just basically like, here's the future. And, you know, what do you want to do in 15 years? I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And then I just was like, well, I want to work with you. And so moved up to Oregon, started working with him, and it was on the RC stuff. And it was just like, oh, I hate this. Like, I hate this too. Like this just, it wasn't art. Like that's all I cared about. All I cared about was art stuff. So fast forward, you know, we got into the RC stuff. I started really learning how to play the game of pushing on my own self to do stuff that I hated. That was something that I had not ever wanted to do, ever liked to do, did not like pushing on myself. I wanted to go and follow my passions and do what I enjoyed. And that was what I thought you were supposed to do. Just follow your passions. Mm-hmm. And it was
so like, what kinds of things did you hate that you were pushing on yourself to do?
None of it was, well, I didn't enjoy the business side of anything. I didn't even enjoy the business side of photography. That was the stuff that I was like, nah, you know?
Yeah.
I like
I have that problem too.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the ownership
a lot of it is
taxes and website games and
the control, like all that stuff. Yeah. And so, so you're not a typical ENTJ because they eat that stuff up. That's
I hated the control side.
Yeah.
And because you're an I single activated.
Right. Yeah. Demon and I did not.
It's the one that,
Yeah. I'm a dancing idiot. I love dancing in the moment and taking pretty pictures. And it was like, that's who I am. Like, yep, that's who I am. I like to, like, it's hard to think, you know, of course I would brag all the time about like, you don't know, I can read people. And that's why I'm really good at photography, because I can move their emotions. And that is why I was good at photography. But it was the whole, like, the whole editing process, like editing down my images. Oh my God. Scheduling, playing the whole, like planning it out, narrowing it down. Oh God, narrowing things down to where it's like, this is the systematic way that you do this every single time. And that's all we were doing in RC. And that's what I've had to learn how to do with the ops stuff as well, is having to do something repetitively, consistently, routinely, and then narrowing it down to just the most systematic, simplified way, which is extreme NI. Yeah. It was tough. It was very tough. But yeah, I eventually started getting it. I eventually started playing the game. I even had to teach myself how to create the foam planes. Like I had to create the foam planes of how do you do this.
Okay. Yeah. We're still talking the RC stuff. Okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I even had to learn how to do that. And I had to learn how to build a website. So I had to learn how to build my own server, all that kind of stuff. Once it got into the ops stuff, that was when things started psychologically changing. Like our worldviews started changing, our minds started changing, the way our brains work started changing. We started seeing things that, your mind doesn't want you to see. And it was the patterns that we saw in the RC community where we couldn't ignore that there were psychological patterns there. And so we had kind of been like, well, what's coming next? What's coming after RC? And we had dabbled in the Myers-Briggs stuff.
Sorry to interrupt. How did that come about? So since you guys were so entrenched in the RC stuff, and I know that Dave used to do the MBTI stuff, was it just because he had noticed that, if you marketed to ISTJs or STJs, that like how did that come about?
Right. When we would dabble all the time because we would put up like different sales pages with different colors on it, and then our sales would go up. So we were playing all kinds of
so just like A/B testing.
Games. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very NI. Like I changed the color red instead of blue and
suddenly, and so you could kind of see how I don't want to say easily manipulated, but how programmable human beings actually are.
Right. Right.
Easily manipulated. It's true.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very weird.
That's what business does, right?
Yes.
Marketing. That's the whole point of marketing, right? Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
And it was weird because, we as humans were like, I don't want to have to do that. Why can't I just create a good product and then the product sell itself?
Right.
But we realized you create the best product, you spend years on the best product, and it didn't matter. It did not matter. I remember it took me, my first plane that I designed, it took me a year to do it because I couldn't figure out SketchUp. I just couldn't. So I built the whole thing out of foam in person. So I had 16 different models that I had kept rebuilding, and it was like the perfect plane. It flew amazing. It looked amazing. And it just sold. It was like, okay, so this is not at all about the product.
Yeah.
And then we started really kind of seeing how far we could take it. And then the next batch was just like the shittiest planes I had ever designed ever. They were just boxy, dumb. They were just dumb.
Right.
And I was just like, okay, let's see how this goes. And we just did the whole marketing around it of okay, they'll give you this, they'll do this, just the whole marketing. And they sold like crazy. And I was just like, I hate that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I would hate that too.
I hated it.
We all kind of have that EP temperament. We're all like, oh no,
right? Why is it not about the product? I have consumed. Why is it not about the thing, the product? Oh yeah, it was hard. And then you start going I have to accept this because I'm a human too, and I have to accept that I myself am moved by marketing. And that was where you start learning okay, the human mind has a whole lot more going on to it than just what I want or what I project on reality, Now you're like, okay, there's a lot more going on here than I thought.
Right.
And and then of course we would get the ISTJ emails that were copy paste the same, and it would be confusing at first where we're like, did this guy just email me? It was the same wording, even the same caps, they would be all caps.
Wow.
Just TE. It was masculine TE ones, the ISTJs that have masculine TE would come in with, hello, dear sir and madam. You're like, this is a joke, right? And they would all ask the exact same thing. They would be like, I would like more information on your instructions. And it was just this is so real.
Yeah.
And then of course, when you see somebody else doing that, you go, okay, how am I doing that?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's when we started kind of delving into the mind. And then yes, we did see patterns in the Myers-Briggs, and Dave was the one that said, okay, so let's put this out there. Let's get our name in the category arena on YouTube of the personality. Because when he first started with the RC stuff, it was like you want to like own a certain domain area.
Right.
You want to get your foot in the door, so like that's your thing. And he was the RC guy. And in the beginning of YouTube, there was only like, 12 different categories, and he was the RC category guy. And he's like, if we do this, I have to start now before I'm ready. And so, he and I would talk over the phone all the time and go, I don't know, because he's like, I don't know what to talk about next week. And we would just run through and be like, okay, grab a Q&A. People do Q&As, do comments, and his little funny audio language, he would be like making fun of their names and saying funny words about it. So
yeah, I guess that's called typology tube.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't know. I was on Reddit, and somebody, I think it was actually the recent thing that Benjamin did with Dave, and they called it like typology tube showdown or something.
Oh.
I was like, with the talks with famous people guy or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, typology tube. Okay, that's
something.
Apparently that's I don't know. Maybe this Redditor made it up, but yeah, it is funny how YouTube has these like spaces.
Yeah,
that, it does. Like, well, I mean, it's just like the real world, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You're gonna have all these little niche categories, and people are gonna be in their own. Which is why they say like, if you can get 10,000 followers, that like the 10,000 people who are like fans of your content, like that is that's the gold.
The true followers. Yeah.
True followers. Yeah. Thank you. That's
and I don't think it's 10. I think Tim Ferriss says like 1,000. If you can get 1,000 true fans.
Oh, is it 1,000?
Well, because those 1,000 true will then spread it, and that's how you get the 10,000. So you probably have 10,000 views, but you have like 1,000 true fans.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've seen too, and it definitely plays out. Once you have your 1,000 group, it's like you could survive off of that no matter what. It's your like home base, your family, your
family. Yeah. You get the true believers, the ones that are gonna go and make podcasts and stuff.
There you go.
Those people. Yeah,
it becomes a cult. That's really what we're talking about here.
It is.
Yeah. It was funny, like we had processed this a long time ago. We're like, this is basically what we're actually doing on purpose. We're creating a cult. And then somebody called Dave one time, and they're like, okay, so I'm really concerned. I just want to let you know that it's starting to sound a little bit like a cult. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a cult.
Well, you can't have culture without cult.
There you go.
Right? Like those words are related. I mean, it is. That's what humans do, right? Like humans create community, we create tribe, and that's a cult. Like it just, and I think it's like, be aware of that. Know what you're doing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, obviously the fear is like, don't have something where people are blindly going, everything they say is
right. Right.
Yes. Do question, Yeah. But yeah. I can see where that's the fear. So that was one thing that we did on purpose, and we had to hold and own the space, but then, we left for a long period of time. Why did we leave for a long period of time? That was when life got real. That was when our own demons started catching up with us. It happened to Dave first, because I mean, if you look at the Maslow's pyramid, the lower ended stuff, he got hit first. Yeah. So it was like just SE chaos. Like, and I'm sure you've heard this story a million times, but it was when the refrigerator shut down, because it was just all over the. We moved into this rental house that was like, it was like a joke. It was like, what was that movie from the 1990s, like Money Pit or whatever? It was just every single pipe, every single sink, every single area where the house could be breaking and falling apart, it was.
Yeah.
And it was a rental, but like the rental company were just impossible to work with. Like they just, like the worst Amazon or the worst Yelp reviews I've ever seen in my whole life. I was like, okay, we're alone here.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to start to ask you, is the hero journey type stuff. So now you're starting to hit the, like, you're thrust into a thing that like you can't get out of, you leave the status quo, and because your physical environment literally started breaking down, is what I'm hearing.
Right. That's where I should have probably started. Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's what I'm here for.
Backstory to hell. So Dave was ready before I was, and that was where so much of the clashing ended up happening. I was not ready. the things that
When you say ready, you mean like to deal with the demons,
Yes.
to acknowledge that they
Yes.
are demons and things you have to take ownership of?
Totally. He was Illuminati crazy talking about the refrigerator, about
Yeah.
like everything.
Yeah.
Chaos is happening. It's happening every day. This is a big deal. And I was just like, no, it's not. It's just the refrigerator problem. It's okay. Like, and I came from the opinion where it was like, this kind of stuff happens all the time and I'm okay with that. You know, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It wasn't my problems. It was just observer shit.
Yeah.
So I was way behind and I was not ready and I was not on board. I created a lot of friction because, you know, I TE argued and I was just like, this is a dumb thing to make a big deal about. So Dave was a lot on his own, even though I was like helping, but it was more like he was on his own. He was on his own to try and wrangle me, our business partner that was causing all kinds of problems in the website stuff. And then I had a baby and just having to, you know, potty train him.
All
and,
that. Just, you had a baby.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a baby.
It's like, I'm in the middle of that shit.
Yeah. Who didn't eat. Like he was like one of those kids that doesn't eat.
Oh God. Yeah.
Like if you sat him there, he would take 3 hours and still not eat. So it was like the kid wants to starve himself. So that was fun. Just figuring out how do you discipline. And it was, that whole game was very, very stressful. And I definitely felt like, what did I do? Like, what did I get myself into? I shouldn't have come up here. I shouldn't have like wrecked my life to get started on this journey, which has just turned into a giant mess. Like that was my perspective.
How long were you up there by that point?
A year. Maybe.
Are we talking months? Oh, a year. Okay.
Yeah, maybe a year.
Yeah.
I'm not good with timing.
Oh, right.
So Dave went through hell. I mean, he was doing things like, and I was doing it with him outwardly, TE style. I was doing it with him, inwardly rebelling.
Right. Yeah.
Very much so. I was like, this is stupid. And I think we should not be making this big of a deal out of it.
Well, and I would think
he could see.
Yeah. Well, and I would think that like, because you guys are jumpers. And so like for you, the hell is the internal hell.
Yes.
Too. Like, which I can totally relate to, as you know, is like we have to go inside.
Yes.
The external world can break apart around us, and we can kind of handle that because it's external.
Right.
But it's like you're right. You'd have to go through something totally different.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yes. And that didn't happen until later. And it was more the pressure that he put on me where I started having to go through my demon stages. Because it was like the one person I cared about was like, you're not performing, that you're out. And it was just like, what, you know? So he went through his hell and he was like, I'm alone. Nobody's here for me. You know, IP, I'm running away. Fuck you. That kind of like energy. Right.
Yeah.
And he finally had gotten to the point where he was doing all of his systematizing and I was doing it with him, but just again, rebelling all along the way. For me, what started happening was, because I literally kept wanting to leave. I kept going, I have to leave. You know, EP, I'm an EJ.
Yeah.
So I was just like,
time to go.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
I gotta go over the mountain. There's other opportunities. I have to go. I can't stay here. There's problems here. When you need to solve problems, you go over the mountain.
Yep.
And I had determined, I said to myself, even if it's not true, I have to stay because I could still see that there were things inside of myself that I had not resolved.
Yeah.
I could still see that, even though I was like, you're a jerk, narcissist, asshole. This is not where I want to be. Like, I just had all of the EJ fears and I attached them all to him. And it was like this just giant stressful thing. And then this was all during the period that we were discovering all of the parts.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So like we were going through
so you guys were doing the like typing 10 people during all of this. Okay.
Well, like this was even before that, but yes, that too. Okay. It was more like, what's happening here? Why am I reoccurringly doing this? Why am I reoccurringly doing this? And then we would come to these. Yeah. Whenever we were like doing good and connected, we were trying to process what's really going on. What was that whole fight about? What was that whole struggle about? Why am I underneath the house crying?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're building up, you're kind of finding the framework because, and you guys have kind of alluded to this, that's like these problems that you encounter in your life. It's like, where's this coming from? Oh, okay. Now I see it's this part. Okay. This is, that actually worked, you know, like it's, you know, it's like, you might think it's one thing, but because that, if you plug in that solution doesn't work. Okay. That's not the problem. Like, okay, what's the next one? Okay. It's this, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you're an ENTJ, but NI is not, or yeah. So
yeah, and we didn't even know I had demon NI at the time.
demon NI, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know.
What did you guys think your types were before you arrived to where you are now?
INTJ, ENTJ. We knew our
okay.
knew our function stack. I mean, when I very first talked to Dave, he thought I might be an ENFJ because, you know, I cry and I'm emotional and I emote for people.
Yeah. Feminine FI.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get moved. I move, my emotions
are movable, and then you've got Save Your Tribe. So yeah.
Right. So yeah, it was through all of that extreme massive amount of just life hell, and we had it was just a background program where we kept trying to resolve what was going on and then understanding that there were patterns going on that were connected to it. The first big one was the jumpers. I feel like that was the first big. I mean, we had talked about like functions being the same. I mean, I was talking to Dave about that a long time ago. Functions being the same universally, that the in and the out were the same. It was doing the same process, that SI wasn't that different from NI as far as the process that it was doing. And the same thing with TI and FI, like all of those parts are doing the same thing. And I had kind of seen that after reading Jung. I was like, oh, there's just an in, out, shallow, deep kind of game going on.
Right.
And then even the double observing and the double deciding, that came about because I was having such a hard time with the move. I couldn't eliminate my stuff. I couldn't decide. And I was like, are you better at you are better at deciding. And so that's where that kind of thing came from. We started seeing the patterns be way more intense as the years went on. Some of these patterns would just grow and be like, oh my God, this is everything.
Yeah. Real quick. The jumpers, I feel like that was for me too, like one of the big ahas, like when I found this system. And I think it's hilarious that there are people who are still like, well, I'm not convinced of the jumpers. You know, it's so funny to me because I'm like, well, how did you get in your head that you need an extroverted and introverted savior? At some point, like we didn't come into this world with that idea. So that got into your thick head. How come this isn't getting into your thick head? And they're like, well, I'm just not convinced. I'm like, you are talking to one right now. Like, Myers-Briggs never fit me. It never fit me.
Right.
And so I knew there was something up with me.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, when you guys said it was a jumper, I was like, okay, there we go.
That's what it is.
There we go.
That's why you don't fit. Yeah. Totally.
How did the did saviors, the idea of a savior and a demon come along at the same time that jumpers came along? Or did you have this idea of a savior and then you realized that some people skip their second one? And jump to their...
That's very interesting. Yeah, I guess that is sort of around I don't know that we called it savior and demon. We might have. I think we were nicknaming it that, and then it ended up sticking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
you were noticing that people had preferences within their stack.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, what started it is that the Elliot Rodgers, do you know, have you ever heard of Elliot Rodgers? He was
I haven't.
A kid that
I think you mentioned
head, shot a bunch of people, but we were studying him at the time because his story was very well documented. Like he had just pages and pages and pages of diaries or journals or something like that. And Dave was studying him and he was like, I don't know what's going on with this kid, but he had developed his TI and his NI extremely early in life, and then he was done. And so we were like processing, because when you get an extreme example, you're like, what is going on there? Why is that happening? And you can see it from an outside perspective. And now you're like, hold on a second. And like, I remember sitting in the car there with Dave and him going, I don't know what else to tell you, but the kid developed his TI and his NI.
And then that was it. Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm like, why, how, what, you know, I'm just TESing him. What? Like, this is so bizarre. Like, and then we started processing, like, what if it jumps? And at the time we thought it might even, and that was when we did a Rolodex where we would roll through all of our people. That's how we kind of started testing all of the parts, ran through and we're like, okay, who does this fit? Okay. What is your mom? What is me? What is it? Like, we happened to have so many jumpers that we knew. And, it was one of those things where we even thought possibly that you could jump and do your first and your fourth. Like we thought that might be a thing. And then we're like, no, that's not what's going on. But then we realized, it's an observer and a decider. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
So, and then you can't not have your first one. We thought maybe you could skip your first one, but you can't.
Yeah.
So
right, because if you're a first observer, if you end up your savior's your other observer, then you'd just be a different type.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it just changes it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, although, you know, it kind of goes back to the animals and the activations then, because you can have a fourth function, you know,
Right.
activated
We
then.
didn't know that at the time, but
Yeah.
that's exactly what was
Yeah.
probably making it difficult. Like there were some people
Right.
that I was like, how does this person not have blast when they would have blast third?
Right.
And I'm like, how does this
Oh,
not
that's
blast?
what it
if
was.
you can't
Yeah.
yeah, but that was much later. We had no idea what the animals were.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's where it started. And then we started realizing, okay, we need to really take this in because you and our business partner are different, even though you're the same type. So what's going on there? And that's when we started processing the Tony Robbins human needs and how those were connected.
Mhm.
And then it just became really wild after that. Realized that I was a chaos monkey. I was not an organizer.
Yeah, it's amazing how many of us think we're organizers. Us chaos
Oh,
monkeys,
yeah.
I mean. I'm referring to all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think
Of
because we
course
can
I'm
see,
organized.
yeah, right. We can see our fourth function like really well because we're like obsessed with it, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would have told you,
Yeah.
nope, I know what I love. I'm very aware of my style. Da, 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 da. You know, of course I know all of that. Like I would have been way all in on like, no, I am NF.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So that's where I was actually thinking about asking you about your NF. So like, how have you developed it?
Okay.
You know, now that you kind of see that that's your weak
Yeah.
spot, you know, how have you gone about developing your
Right.
Demon NI and Demon FI, I guess? Yeah.
Right. Really good question. Okay, so over the years, I started playing the game that I saw Dave play and accidentally win at. And it was way harder for me. So it was like, all I knew is that I needed to put extreme amount of pressure on myself and that myself didn't believe it or buy it.
Yeah.
So it was like two extreme sides of my brain that was like, this is bullshit. I don't care. And then the other side that was like, do it. I know it's the right thing to do. So I was like, okay. So it's been for me a game of how much pressure can I put on myself to see if I can break myself. And so, you know, I would go outside and sleep in the cold and stay in the snow and sleep on the floor and take cold showers and, you know, cause problems for myself, like just constantly putting pain or pressure on myself to see if I could break.
So in order to, because you've mentioned you're hardening your FI, right?
Yeah.
And so like, so you do cold. So I've done cold showers and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just ran a Spartan. We were just talking about it.
Right. That kind of
like,
stuff. Yeah.
Towards what end? Like, what were you trying to, like, how can you, towards what end? What benefit does that then do for your FI?
I was trying to, like, I would cause problems in the house by being argumentative or,
no.
Yeah.
With masculine TE, you were
I don't know where that comes from.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
go on. Sorry.
I wasn't, like my animal wasn't scared of causing problems.
Okay.
And so I was trying to just break it and humble it and force it to let go emotionally of
shit. I feel like I need to take a note. Like, oh shit. It's ingenious. I see exactly what you're talking about.
Right. That was a whole game that I played that game
So,
for
like,
years and years.
Yeah.
I'm
Prasavia's
little
like, I don't
kind
get it. I don't have Demon FI.
no, in terms of just like, so you did all of these things. So okay, so you're saying on the one hand that you were being really, really argumentative and all of these other things that were coming up.
Right.
And you were also putting yourself in these situations in order to break yourself.
Right.
What did, like, so when you did break yourself or when you did cross that threshold, whatever that threshold is, like, what did that result in? Like, towards what end, I guess?
Right. Like, what was the thing that fixed it?
Or
Well, not what fixed it, but like, okay, so you're taking cold, or like you keep pushing yourself. Is it to see where your breaking point is and to see how far you can push yourself?
No,
or?
it was mainly because, so like I'm an EJEP, and when problems would arise, I always had this, and I think everyone has this, but I had this secret card in my back pocket that was like, nope, I have another way, and it's my savior's, and I'm gonna go rock it in the world, and you don't even know, and you don't know, and I'm gonna be awesome. And then I would break, and then it would take me like 18 to 24 hours to come back around, and then Dave would have to convince me and calm me down and be like, no, you can stay, you know, because like he would just the fighting was intense, and it was this like, I can't do this, you know. And he was very aware of how to break me to an emotional point of where I was just like, that's it, I'm leaving. And he's like, if you can quit, quit.
Yeah.
And that's like, so like, think of like the Navy SEALs and when they ring that bell, right?
Because
I'm like ringing the bell every 7 fucking days because I was just like, nope, nobody talks to me like that.
I don't know about Navy SEAls or ringing a bell.
Yeah, so in, what is it? It's called
Buds camp.
Buds. Yeah, they can actually leave and quit at any time.
Yeah, right.
At any time they can ring a bell and it's over, right?
Yes.
This is hell.
Okay.
Like, this is the hardest. This is the hardest training in all of the military, arguably the world, right? Because the military is already hard fucking core,
right?
And then you've got like the most hardcore of the hardcore,
right?
Okay.
And I like by nature,
you're teaching yourself to sit in the heat.
Yeah, and I'm a quitter. I'm absolutely a quitter.
Okay.
I'm a quitter, and I would quit every 7 days emotionally. I'd be like, I'm done. I'm out. Nobody can talk to me like that. Nobody could call me these names. I don't deserve this. I'm better than this. And, you know, of course, I just had this stubborn, like, you're mean to me. You know, all the EJ words, all the DE words. You're mean to me. You're so mean. I don't deserve this. This is too cruel. The outside world wouldn't accept this, you know, blah, 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 blah.
And then you're like, I'm out. That's what you're naturally, essentially, you're putting yourself through hell.
The EP part.
Yeah. Right. You're putting yourself through hell to keep your ass in that seat, that hot seat.
Right. But it was so broke. It would break the machine that we're trying to build, because here I am going, you know what? I'm trying my best. I'm trying so hard to get this. I'm trying hard to get our business to be on time, I'm working the amount that 20 people would work. That's how much I do. And like, it was still not enough because we're pushing ourselves to extremes. And then there would be clashing and fighting and blah, 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 blah. And I would quit. I'd quit every 7 days. And then Dave would have to convince me. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, I did it again. I broke again. There was my tidal waves again of, you know, just my main mode of interacting was, I will fight you instead of putting more pressure on myself. I will argue with you first instead of solve the problem or solve me, because it became very like attacky, you know. And I was like, that's it, I'll attack you back, you know. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, I know I may not like the way things are handled still as an EJ, but I'm like, this is me. This is coming from me, because I would see all these patterns from just every EJ on the internet being like narcissism and this and just, and I'm like, okay, these are my patterns. I can't deny that anymore. Whether it's real and it's actually happening, it's coming from me. I'm the one drumming this up. It's like if somebody else was sitting here, there would be a whole different problem.
Yeah.
And I just decided, like, I'm fucking done. I'm fucking done. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be a victim to my own human needs. I don't want to be addicted to my saviors anymore. And that's why I started putting just whatever it was. I will sleep on the floor. I will I will sleep in the snow. I will, you know, cause pain to myself. Like, I was doing whatever I could to just, I was desperate. I determined that this is not something that I struggle with anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing that got me past the like go point, whatever the like actual point was, I started building internal promises. That was the thing that started actually changing. And my number one promise was, I will never argue again. And it was like, how am I going to do that?
Right.
I have lean T. I have lean masculine T. Like, everything out of my mouth.
That's a really good,
everything sounds, even I'm like, am I trying to, but it sounds so argumentative. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. It's just a damn argument machine, you know? And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, because I wanted to start building my FI. And I was like, okay, how I would build my FI is I would actually have to start putting some like structure to it. I'd have to start carving away at it and being like, this is who I am.
This is who
like,
I am, regardless of what the external world is telling me. Yeah.
I am a person, I decided, I am a person that does not argue.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean I don't do it, but like, it was like every single time I could like, nope, I don't argue. So it was like turning off my first function.
Yeah, no. Okay. No, that makes sense to me. I mean, it's similar to what Dave was saying with like, when you decide I'm not going to eat sugar or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Or like,
Right.
I've done gluten-free from time to time. And yeah, it's like I just don't eat bread. I just don't eat bread, right?
Yeah,
and it's
that's
like
a
there's
part
still
of your FI.
yeah, there's still an animalistic part of me that's like,
Yes.
I want to eat bread. Like that part doesn't stop, but you become a person who doesn't do that. And another thing that like, I've always heard, language is so important because it's a choice that you made, that you said, like, I have chosen that this is who I am, not that I can't. It's not, I can't argue.
Right.
Because then it becomes like, oh, I can't do that. Right.
I'm not allowed.
Yeah, I'm not allowed.
And it becomes an external thing.
Yes, it does. Which is exactly what you're trying to get out of.
That's a perfect way of describing it, because you are saying the language of I am a person. Because I realized that I had standards in myself that accidentally got built there from childhood. Like, I am a person that isn't late. That is a part of my identity because, my dad was very intense and we happened to build that into my identity. I am a person that is never late, no matter how much pressure I put on myself. And so, okay, if that's a part of my identity and I accidentally did that, what can I do on purpose? And yes, it became about, I need to be a person that decides I never argue. And then once I was like, ooh, what else can I start adding? Okay. So that was number one. Having to dial down the TE basically.
Yeah.
And then the very second one.
So that's also in the process of dialing down that TE, it was also because you're attaching that to your identity. You're intentionally building up your DI, your FI. Yeah.
Right. Because it
which
has nowhere to
before
go.
that happened accidentally.
Yes.
It had nowhere to go but up.
It had nowhere to go. I looked at it like in fact, I thought of this concept before I actually started doing the no arguing thing, but I saw it as like you're in a room and every single problem that you come to, every single task that you have to do, you're inside of a room and there's 4 walls and you can kind of look at yourself inside that room. And the wall that's to, your right or whatever is the wall that's actually solving the problem and going through. And usually you have to do your demons to go through and solve the problem and actually punch through that wall. And then there is TE, argue, for me, my savior function. So it's argue, run away, or blame are the other 3 walls. That's what I was like consistently like bouncing around the other 3 walls. Yeah. Argue, run away, blame, argue, run away, blame, argue, run away, blame. And I was never like put the pressure on yourself and go through and actually solve the problem. And that was like my promise number 2. That was like, turn off the ability to go through the TE wall. And so you just put a brick wall in front of that wall. And then I also put a brick wall in front of, I'm chaining my own leg to the bedpost. I'm not leaving.
Not leaving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody's going to have different walls then as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you think, like, as you were, changing yourself and you were putting yourself through this and going through this process, having a partner who was supporting you and pushing you through this along the way, even though you guys were arguing and all those other things, versus if you were doing this without somebody in your life also pushing you through it, or like because when Dave did it or went through this part of his journey,
right,
how had that impacted things?
I would say it's the only reason that I made it through. It's the only reason that I actually did it, although it was extremely hard because it became a very like babysit type situation where he was like the adult and I was the kid. And it was like, you're doing it wrong. It just felt very much like I had put myself back into a very childish position where I was always messing up and always getting in trouble. And he was the parent and I was the kid. And it was a very weird situation, but again, I would not have done it. I would not have pushed myself had it not been for Dave. But yes, watching Dave go through it on his own was kind of like, how did you do that? Like, how did you actually push so hard on yourself? And like we've talked about it since, and he happens to have functions that align with that naturally, of like a masculine FI, savior, and I can see what's coming, can see he has no other choice, narrowed himself, blast sleep. He's just going over the same known information, putting more pressure on his own self versus having to deal with the tribe. So sure, he has some natural parts, but the fact that he made it through and did what he did on his own is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah, it's still impressive. And I'm sure that, you know, in your studies of other people, you've seen that a lot of times it just like life forces this shit out of people a lot of times. Like, you know, like I've been through situations, obviously you guys know, where it's like I had no choice. Like, you know, I had two significant losses, just boom, boom, right next to each other. Like, I can't call my brother. I can't call my mom, who was the one that I would go to for help.
Yeah,
I can't. And so you end up hitting walls in life, or you build them, you know?
Right.
So
that's exactly it. Yeah. Like you got, I hate to say it.
Well, lucky. I hear you.
Lucky that life threw you into I call it a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I've come to see
where it's
it,
sink or swim.
Yes. I've come to see it as like a jewel, like something that it's not something I necessarily asked for or want, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I have this really valuable thing that occurred. Now, to me, my responsibility is like, what can I do now with that? Like, you know, you've put yourself through this, and now you're doing something with it. You're growing and giving and moving to the next step. So I feel that very strongly of like, what can I now do since I've been through that stuff? I can't just sit at home by myself and not say anything anymore. You know? Yeah.
I hear you. That's exactly it. Because if you've gone through it, then all you want to do is be able to help somebody else through.
Yeah.
It is wonderful on the other side of, I see it as like a line between consciousness and unconsciousness.
Yeah.
Consciousness of every single thing that is happening to you is actually coming from your savior demon switcheroo. And yes, stuff is real. It's not that the problems aren't necessarily real, but so much of it, the intensity that we put on it is just coming from our own brains. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was trying to do. What you went through is like why I was putting all that pressure on myself. I didn't have it hard enough to where my brain was breaking. So that's what the whole, like,
you have to break your own brain, which is weird. It sounds awful, but I mean, you do, like,
like you throw yourself into the fire and go swim so you can survive. Because I knew too much. I could see too much, and it was like I can't go back to townsfolk land. You know, I knew too much. I knew that I was the problem. I knew that I had a savior demon problem, and if I didn't solve it, if I didn't make it through, then I never would be able to have a good life, because I didn't make it past that threshold. So
but it's also not like a one-stop shop. Like, it's a continuous journey, and like you can take, and not can, everyone does. You take steps forward, but you take steps back too. And there will be times when you regress. It's not like, oh, hey, I made it over this hump and now I'm there. Like, it has to be active intention of, like, you know, constantly doing it.
Maintaining it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The work itself, I mean, it's definitely still hard every single hour, you know, it's still hard every single hour, but I don't have any unconsciousness anymore. There's no internal struggle like there was before. That's gone. Because there was a lot of internal fighting and internal struggle that, no, this really isn't fair. This really isn't my fault. I don't really deserve this.
Mental gymnastics.
Yes. There was a lot.
And like just deluding yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was so much of that. Right. And that's gone. It's just gone. I know that it's me all the time.
Yeah.
And I lean on the side, way on the side of it is always me, even if sometimes it's not, because it's, I don't ever end up a victim on that side.
Yeah.
Now it's always me, and I get myself out of it, and life is very peaceful.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting.
Everyone goes into we're like,
no, So I was
let me sip some LaCroix.
3 weeks ago, I was fired from my job, and there was like, you know, there was lots of reasons why it happened, and anytime I tell people about it, I notice myself double deciding, because there was things that I was doing, and there were things that my manager, I think, handled very poorly. Right. But at the end of the day, it is very much still of that, like, that at the end of the day, I was in that job, and I let myself get fired, so to speak. Like, whatever else might have been going on, whatever other incompatibilities that were happening, like, there is that sentiment of it's my responsibility.
Right.
Whatever, other dysfunctions do or don't happen. But interestingly enough, when I talk to some of my, and I think part of this is just people because they want to like show you that they support you. But a lot of my friends are very like, they go on these little like rants about my manager.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to support me and they're trying to lay blame because nobody wants to lay blame. It's like, it is your fault.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
not to your face. And that's
right. That's why I'm like, if you're the first person to be like, no, I really fucked up. People are like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. Or they'll say, well, I wasn't going to tell you.
Yeah, that.
But, you know, I mean, and I mean, that's the thing is like, it's good that you had Dave in your, you know, in your situation because you need, I feel like it's really great to have a truth teller in your life. Somebody who is going to call you out.
Oh, it's necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
And like,
that's
they
like,
will tell you the truth, even if it is like, it ends up killing you. Like it's extremely valuable to hear that kind of intense truth. And that's one thing that I was like, I will never, ever be ungrateful for that right there. Because, you know, especially somebody like me, I have lead TE at the top. Who's going to tell me the truth?
Right. Lead masculine TE.
I'm an arguer. Why would it? Nobody bothers. Nobody wants to go up against a brick wall. So I was very lucky. Very, very lucky.
Yeah, TE is incredible for arguing, man. We can come up with so many reasons. So many reasons. And I guess like
it's dangerous.
That's why I wanted to ask you a little bit about the, you know, hardening your FI, because I feel like with me, with my demon feminine FI, it's almost like a problem where my NETE is so good at coming up with all kinds of reasons why my identity is not good enough.
Right.
Like my NT problem solving machine gets turned on against myself, which is just like awful. Like it's crazy, but like so that's why I was wondering, like when you say harden it, do you mean like toughen it up? But what you're saying is build it, essentially.
So absolutely, the first thing that helped me was turning off the TE. So that one, I think, because I kept trying to go the other way, and the TE is too powerful.
It is
way too powerful. So that is the one that put all. It was like, if you have like a tidal wave or a tsunami and then you just put a giant dam up, it's just going splash and then smacking back. And it like, that's where you just have a tsunami. Like, even if you like, I'm going to build myself, and then you stand in front of the tsunami, you just get washed away. Like it's telling that TE, even though it's hard to do, you are not allowed to argue ever again and become the person that does not argue. And as soon as you start actually playing that game, it's every other door now gets knocked on. You have to go towards, okay, am I going to now leave? No. Okay, great. So that one's another thing that you're building into your identity. Oh, I can't leave, can't argue, can't leave. How about blame? Can you blame? Can you blame? Are you going to be able to blame? I can't blame. Nobody else is at fault. So now you actually have to solve the real problem. And that's when you start going, okay, well, what is actually going on in reality? And now you're like, I have all this information that's available to me now. Okay, am I being a weirdo single observer? Am I being a weirdo self-deprecating idiot? Am I, well, did the person even say that? Did they mean that? Did I mean that? Well, what do I want out of life? Now there's all this other information that is available to you that wasn't there before, because you actually have to solve the problem. You can't use your favorite weapons to get out of it.
That's a good one. Cause for me, I thankfully have a friend who I'm pretty sure is like FESE or something like that. And she is like my check the sensory friend. Like she even knows, like, that's like the language we use. She's like, let me check your sensory here. Cause a lot of times what's missing. Cause I got those observers on the polls and I'm just not paying attention to the reality of things, you know, but
do you think there is, so this came up, you know, during one of the Q&As, especially because you guys were just kind of like playing it live, and you had mentioned that, like, wait a second, maybe I haven't been hardening my FI. Do you think, like, as an idea, like we talk about hardening our feminine functions and softening our masculine functions. Do you think that that's actually possible, or is it more about just accepting the negativity that comes with your demon, in terms of like accepting that your FI is going to be movable, and accepting or knowing what your identity is, and knowing that sometimes it will give in response to your masculine reasons.
Really, really good question, because I definitely have put, so like a lot of these theories we'll test out for a while and drop them when they don't serve us anymore. And I definitely feel like the whole like masculine and I need to harden it and I need to make it more masculine. I was just watching how Dave was doing things and I'm like, how are you able to like, put so much pressure on yourself? Maybe that's because of your masculine FI. And then I realized, no, it's more about you don't put pressure on the outside world, you put pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
That was where I was like, oh, well, I'm constantly putting so much pressure on the outside world and making them responsible. And then I'm just out of control using that masculine TE to even more so, put pressure on the outside world and argue with the outside world. And that's how I'm doing it. Everybody can put pressure on the outside world. Doesn't matter what your functions are. And then I realized it was more about stop putting pressure on others. So no more arguing and no more blame. And no more leaving to wiggle out, like just stopping that game of like outward pressure. And then you have to turn inward. And now you have to start going, I'm going to be this person. I'm not going to let myself off the hook. I'm going to discipline myself. I'm going to stay up late tonight because I didn't solve my problem. I'm going to get up early and because I didn't solve my problem. I'm going to do an extra workout because I didn't solve my problem. I'm going to cause pain and pressure on myself because I didn't solve my problem. Not arguing with somebody else, making excuses, blaming somebody else, or wiggling out of the problem. Just in every way, it turned into a game of stop the pressure out, put the pressure in.
And so that still applies, you'd say, is that for anybody or is that pretty much an EJ?
Every single person will blame and
Yeah.
shove the responsibility. We call it like teenager energy.
Yeah.
Well, they will like the
Throwing a temper
government or
tantrum.
you or my friend or just blame, just constantly putting the pressure outward to protect their inside self. Now, of course it lined up, and I always thought it was just because of my function, but it happens to line up where I have an intense amount of masculine outward energy, savior function, and then feminine weak inside energy, which of course, yes, that is a large portion of why it would be very difficult for me to do that, because I want to protect my feminine FI feelings. I don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like
and that MT is really good at protecting.
Right.
Well, MDE.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny because when I got my type back, you said we have some things in common, and like I'm like listening to you, and it's like I've got masculine SI, but like to me the S is external anyway. Like even though it's SI, it's still like the real world.
Oh yeah.
And then my feminine NE, I've been noticing lately as I've been sort of working with this stuff that my NE FI consume, my double feminine consume is actually causes some of these problems because my NE is so movable, so it can think of all these options, and then my FI is movable, so it's like not sure what it wants, and then NE's like, well, here's all these options, you can do all these connections. Like, no, I need to like harden that machine, my double feminine parts. So yeah, I see what you mean by like it's got to go. It's that internal pressure of like putting it on yourself. Yeah.
Like if the addiction, so it's like if your addiction is to something, you have to first turn off that addiction. And it forces you to then go use the demons. But like if you never turn off the fire to the saviors, they would just go all day long. And for you, it might be like, because I know from my SE, I have to be like, no, nothing new. Because it feels so good. It's like dopamine to just be like rolling through, but what if this, what if this, what if this,
So what's the difference between then?
Go ahead, Versailles.
Like turning off the saviors and forcing yourself to use the demons.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right.
So like, because I mean, the whole premise of savior demon, right, is I do this before I do this.
Right.
So turning off the saviors, are you still doing this? Or is it more that like by forcing yourself, putting yourself in a situation where you have to do your demons, yes, you're doing your savior, but because you're also doing your demons, like you end up spending more time doing your demons, therefore you spend less time doing your saviors.
Right. I would still say no matter what, you're going to end up using your saviors. Like it's not like the ratio, you're still going to use your saviors. I'm still using logic to try and block something and figuring things out just constantly. Like that's what my brain is doing all day long, unfortunately. But the game, I don't know if it's a human need type thing. I just like,
I was
you're
thinking the human needs, but go on,
right,
finish.
The new.
Yeah, the new.
Like if your brain is addicted to constantly new, and you're just overdoing, like how would your NI ever have a chance? It doesn't.
Okay.
You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're making time for your NI, or like if you're making time for your demons.
Yeah, right. Like say you need to actually organize something and narrow something down, and you're like, let me go learn something new, and you go to the internet and you're pulling in all this information, and now you're like, maybe if I read another book, or maybe if I read another article, or maybe if I learn something new, and you're constantly bringing in new stuff, and then you're like, okay, and I just work harder to narrow down all of that stuff I brought in. It's like, you'd have to like turn off the water hose and stop bringing in new. And yeah, it feels like death. It feels so, it's very hard. It feels like you're going off of drugs, you know, not that I know what that's like, but the drug,
the dopamine addiction of it.
Withdrawal.
Yeah.
No, and it does.
You're going through withdrawal.
Yeah, it does. And so I do think it's a human needs thing, because I've experimented with this sort of thing. You know, I do this is what I do.
Right.
But like it's that addiction to the gather and your other, so like in your, although it's interesting for somebody with savior identity, I wonder how that works out, you know, because for me it's
doing things your way.
Doing things your way.
Not asking.
Always,
I mean, what we do inappropriately is, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think? It's just asking for the ping back. Pa, 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 pa. And if you're only asking your own self consistently, that's where you'll get the problems for your own self. You know, just you're overdoing one of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. And so, for the for the IJs, it's actually taking in new, not keeping controlling and controlling.
Turn off the machine that is obsessing over one goddamn thing. Like, oh my God, I'm all in on my one plan or my one thing that's
like
coming.
Maybe watches or knives.
Watches.
Sorry.
we just typed a guy, a watch YouTuber, because my husband's like upset. He loves like the watch things, like he loves it's funny because he gathers, but then he wants to just organize it,
right? Because
he's obsessed with like the same three.
And that's like Dave has talked about how his consume is in service of that, like how he has that knife collection or he knows all about the knives, right? But it's going into the box that already exists.
Yeah, it feels like all of our other animals fit inside of our larger animal. So it's like that one is still the god, and we'll give that one.
Yeah. And it feels like super disingenuous, or like almost like dishonest or bad when you actually turn off your saviors.
Yes.
You feel like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah. Feels like you're doing something wrong, because you're losing the dopamine hit, and your brain is telling you, warning.
This is wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Which goes back to what you were saying about the sort of the buds training kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
It's like if you have trained your animal, your body to withstand that,
exactly,
then because your body only has but so many signals it can send you, so the feeling is going to be essentially the same as taking a cold shower or whatever. I was trying to cause
more problems in the realm of buds training, let's say, cause more problems over here, so that my brain was like, I don't need my saviors that bad. That's where it's like you make it so intense that your brain now finally remembers of like, if I argue, I get this to happen to myself, so I don't want it. And you're just connecting negativity to your saviors instead of the extreme dopamine hits.
So you're just conditioning yourself.
It's conditioning,
and it's
you're
not
reconditioning
easy,
yourself.
Yes.
It's recondition. It's retraining. Yeah.
You have to break your brain.
I did a meditation retreat once where we sat outside all night. It was a 24-hour meditation.
That's
and
cool.
So like that, I walked out of there like enlightened almost. Like I felt so at peace with reality after doing something, like forcing myself to sit outside in Atlanta, Georgia in the winter in December, like that cold, and I couldn't move. So to your point, you're like, me naturally, I want to gather, I want to get new things, but no, it's like you're gonna sit in this one place looking at this one tree. I got to know that tree, and that was it. Like you got to go to the bathroom, and that was it. But yeah, you're right. It's like our EP temperament wants to go. It wants to go. And so it's that keep your butt in that chair.
I love that. That's exactly what I would do. Stuff like that, where I made myself stay outside in the dark just for hours and hours and hours every night. Yeah. Sometimes I was like, we have a ditch in the backyard that we've been trying to dig, that goes all the way down. And I've been digging that just, one bucket at a time for years, So it's like that kind of thing where you're just obsessively staring at a tree for hours. Yeah. It forces you to go in.
It does. And for some reason, I'm also, maybe because I'm I'm thinking of my dog. I remember you have to train them to sit, and then you throw a treat in their face, like right in front of them, where all they have to do is get up and get that treat.
Yes.
You have to train them like, no, you gotta sit.
That's the game. You're just treating yourself like a dog. You're like, I naturally am addicted to this cookie. Let me put, paint on that cookie, and, Pavlov's, the whole process. Yeah,
definitely.
That's it.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the reasons why, like, when I did my bike tour and me doing the PCT right now is because of that, like getting up every single day for 3 months and riding my bike for 50 miles and just that over and over and over again.
Right.
And like the obligation to, because like literally I'm the only person I can rely on in that situation, right? I can't call anybody up or do something like that. So getting up and taking care of all those things right now with the PCT, where it's just going to be every single day the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, there's going to be new things that come along, but it's not like
the routine,
the life that I have now. Yeah, there's going to be a routine there.
Yeah.
And forcing myself in a situation where there is that kind of external structure.
Right. Totally. Yeah, you're just chaining yourself. Like, okay, I usually go through this wall or this wall or this wall, but this time I'm not.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the journey.
Yeah.
So what are you, if you don't mind sharing, what are you working on now? And like, what's the
where's your edge
growth area right now that you're trying to overcome and trying to move towards?
I would say it's still in that same exact realm, because it's like once that started working, because I mean, I was just blowing up the house every 7 days. So once that started working, it was like, okay, now go into maintain. And so what it became about was like every hour be able to build those same standards for yourself. And like, because I already know my mission. I already know that we're taking this to the world. That's our goal. We wanted to be able to pass on even if we're gone. That's the number one goal. And there's series of things that we have to do in order to do that. But for my personal growth, my own self, it's just, I still have to build the muscle. Like I spent 30, some odd years doing it one way. It feels like I was living on the moon, and now I have to come back down to planet Earth and learn how to walk. And so, just every hour, it's like, okay, make it to the next hour, put all the pressure on myself instead of others, no arguing. Like just all of that has become my bread and butter of like, this is how I survive. I make it to the next hour. I make it to the next hour. And my next goal is to get it to the point where we're actually getting off work earlier, and we're ahead. I mean, we're already like in production wise, we're like a month ahead and a month and a half ahead in some of the other stuff. But I want to be even farther ahead. And then of course this year we're actually going to be hiring like 1 to 2 operators. So I'm getting myself prepped in my own personal growth. And then we're also coming up with methods on how to communicate that with other people, on the pressure on self and pressure on others, that whole game of like, how do we actually pass on that? Because great, you now know your type, who cares? But like, how are you actually going to go through the hero's journey? That's been like, in our opinion, the science, whoever science is, science or the world or the government will care more about the op system that we've, organized. But what we see as the most valuable thing is actually the hero's journey, and how we'll be able to like, I systematically help people go through this whole process themselves. Like when we actually do what the military is doing and actually build other people who are like crossing from one side to the other, going past deathbed, and actually being able to put the pressure on themselves and become a different human. Because otherwise, what's the point? The op stuff is just a manual. It's like, oh, you in particular are going to struggle with.
That's what well, I was gonna say, I just posted a video on our channel about we're all in our own mecha suits. And so it's just like a manual of like how your mecha suit works. But like, that's all that really is. Like forget about it after that. I mean, assuming you get it right. You'll know though if it's not. Like, that's my whole thing.
But if you are demon oh, why? And you were like, nope, I'm a planner. It's like, well, good luck then.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. And then, yeah, I think, for you guys bringing on new people, that's going to bring a whole new challenge too. Cause now
Yes.
you're going to be in that leadership role. And I know like when I made that transition,
Yeah.
now it's like, how do you lead people? How do you develop
Yes.
your people, lead your people,
Right.
accurately tell them where to go and how to do their thing? So yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's going to be
Yeah.
Blast.
And now you're going to be in that position of being the parent, the adult to someone when they're throwing their teenage rebellion, like, no, I'm going to push against this.
yeah.
Totally. And I've had the same, I mean, I've had my son here, so that's been a really
Kids
good,
are so helpful.
right? And he's the same
Yeah.
type as me too.
They
So it's
really
been
are.
like laughable because he'll do the exact same stuff that I'm struggling with. I'm like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
I know what to tell him to do. Pass this on to you, or what you need to do.
Is he like, as a kid, he's what, 8 or something,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
he on board with like?
Yeah.
He is.
Well, I mean, he can't really not be, but like,
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously there's parents, there's what mom and dad say, right?
right.
But in terms of like, I don't know, I guess. So you mentioned earlier that like, so ops is just the vehicle, right? But the goal is the hero's journey.
Yeah.
But before anybody can go on a journey, one of two things needs to happen, right? Either their situation forces them or they themselves decide.
Right.
So I guess when you're raising a kid, a big part of it is that the situation is forcing them, because that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Right.
But in terms of like, is he, how aware of it is he, and is he on board with it?
Are you talking about like him learning how to put pressure on himself to grow? Is that?
Yeah. Like,
yeah,
or
since he
bringing
was
the unconscious into consciousness.
Since he was a baby, we've been constantly telling him his parts and kind of moving in, helping him figure out, okay, how do I do this? How do I grow my own FI? How do I put pressure on myself? Like, since he was a kid, so he's extremely conscious of that's one of the things that's been kind of interesting to watch, because I mean, all of us grew up not knowing why these things were happening. Like, he's extremely aware. When he messes up, he's like, I messed up. I did this with my FI. I TE argued with my teacher, and I know it was me. Like, the thing that's sort of disheartening is like, just because you know your parts doesn't mean you stop the addiction. So it's still,
of course.
like, he's addicted as a
get trained.
baby, right?
Yeah.
It's not like he still has to like break it in his own self. But yeah, there's things like meditating that he'll use on his own now, and like creating lists for himself, because he'll forget, because it's anything that he has to do more than once, he'll forget it all the time, constantly will forget it, just because the OE is like dropping things out the back of their head. If there's 10 things to remember, he'll only remember 6 of them,
Yeah.
So he'll use lists and stuff like that for himself now, lists and timers to help put pressure on his own self, because that's just what we've been training him to do for years. So as a little 8-year-old, he's learning to manage his own demons, but still got a long way to go. But
I mean, he's 8 years old.
Yeah.
He's 8. Yeah.
How early did you guys see his type? That's actually something that Evelyn and I have talked about a bit.
Yeah.
In terms of like lifespan development.
Right.
I mean, I think once you get up into teens and 20s,
Right.
but like as a kid, how early did you guys start seeing things?
I told Dave when he was 5 months, I could see SE and TE in him, and I had no idea that like you could see jumpers. Like, I had no idea. We didn't know until way later. I was just like, I don't know what order they are in. I just know that he has SE, not NE, and TE, not FE.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was like, you'd see babies where you're like, hi, and they would be like, light up. Like, Cody was like, don't look at me like that. Like, he just would give you this like, get out of my face. And he was very particular. Like, the only people that he would like were the ones that were like
right back at him.
FI standoff. Like, he loved he loved my Uncle Pat, which was a double masculine SI-FI. Just a very like, leave me alone kind of guy, and just a tough guy, and just Cody was just like, loved, like he would come for him. He was very FI, like, just don't look at me, don't show me emotion. And he would get annoyed at emotion. And I was just like, oh, that's TE, not FE. And then I don't know why I knew he was SE. He was just constantly exploring, experiencing, just banging around, climbing all over the place. He was not somebody that you could see was doing the puzzling.
Puzzling. That, yeah, I can
Yeah.
see with my son who's only 18
Right.
months old that he's puzzling. He
Right.
he does a thing and then tries to see what it does because he can tell he's puzzled in his mind. He's like, this should do something.
Right. My
It's
brother's an
it's
ENTP.
not a yeah.
My brother's an ENTP, and I can see like, okay, so I know what that looks like growing up.
Yeah.
And his son, I think, is the exact same type as him. And so what, like watching Cody and his son like next to each other, I was like, this is very different. Like just this one is doing puzzling, you know, and this one is not. This one is.
I know exactly what you mean by the eyes. I know.
Right.
Does this do what I'm expecting it to do?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's
trying to understand. Yeah.
This could be a whole nother conversation, but that's when he gets the most frustrated, is when the world doesn't work like he in his head thinks it should.
Right.
Which tells me that he's doing that. Whereas like my daughter doesn't do that. I think she's probably more like on the SI type.
Right. Interesting.
Where like she needs her sensory control. She freaks out if it's not. Yeah. Poor Luis. I think they've got my functions. We'll see. Anyway, we should probably wrap up here soon. So anything else, Versavia, that you wanted to ask or anything?
I wanted, just before we wrap things up, I wanted to ask about FE.
Oh yeah, it's on our list. But,
you know, the functions that aren't in your stack, but particularly FE as somebody who does lead with masculine TE.
Right.
And also, I mean, like, you know, you working on your FE, that would be your big journey, because that's, you know, your FI flipped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the FEs are very interesting. The way they communicate is, it's like they will use emotion and value to argue instead of it doesn't work and the parts are not blocking together and therefore, you know, it doesn't fit. So they'll use things like, they'll use joy, they'll use anger, they'll use, positive, negative emotion to get the reactions out of people, the same reactions that a TE would do. They're going to use that is good, that is not good, and they'll see it very much on a spectrum. So their entire language is going to be very much about they're going to be looking at the spectrum of this is believable, this is not believable, this is valuable, this is not valuable, and they will talk about it in a way that is like, the more people like it, the more people feel good with it, the more it is highly chosen on a spectrum thing. And it's very like they'll talk about it as like the culture, and they'll see the values of the whole culture. They're constantly talking about, I know Brene Brown talks about shame, but like they're very aware of like being shamed by the outside tribe. Like when you feel the negativity, it's that you are no longer valuable to the spectrum of the tribe. That's how they're seeing it, as a value outward thing.
Yeah. It's so funny. They're different language. Like I said, I think I'm pretty sure my best friend is FESE, and like we were talking about a movie, and she was saying at one point, she was like, yeah, you know, I don't want to be the type of person who's happy to see a character die, but, and I'm thinking, what?
Right. Like it's such a, like a human thing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like she filtered it through the culture, like that she didn't want to come off as that type of person. Whereas like in me, it's like, well, did you like it or did you not like it?
Right.
Like, like, were you happy that he died or not happy that he died? You know?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It's a very interesting language. And I admire what they're doing, because I definitely, like, if I could choose, I'd be like, oh yeah, I would definitely want to see like value outward instead of like logic outward, because logic is like, I don't know. I mean, of course you want both, but it's like, I see what you guys are doing, and that's very effective. That's what I see. Like when you watch Oprah, wow, that's very effective. You know?
The number one tool you want in your bag for marketing, for good marketing, is FE. And if you have FE and I, then just like gold.
I know.
But like if you can FE, that's what good marketing is, because you need to appeal to people at an emotional level. Because at the end of the day, sure, we'll do the research, we'll think about what the reasons are to buy something, but at the end of the day, we buy something because we want to buy something.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello. It makes sense that we should use these parts this way, and everyone's like, like notice how we do our shows on YouTube, like specifically how we do our shows on YouTube.
Yeah.
I am a laughing idiot. Why? Like, do I really want to do the shows that way? No, I want to argue. I want to talk about this doesn't make any sense. This is stupid. Let's like, I want to just be very like, blocky about it. But I'm like, laughing cells, happy.
You guys also like You have like you've been finishing your YouTube episodes with something,
Yes.
some hit of FE for people,
Leave you with
no
good
matter
food.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the emotion goes up.
Yeah.
And that
With
is
a
something that,
smile.
of course, Dave being, value dominant, he's extremely aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather just end it and be like, done. We're done. Turn it off. We're done.
And scene. Not that we do that.
Yes. Cut. Done. Make it as glossy as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Give double middle fingers and be done.
Yeah, exactly. Drop it. Yeah.
Shall we finish that way? No.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're done here.
Ciao.
This is the tea show now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so
Cool.
much for having me on, girls. This was really great.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. This has
Yeah.
been fantastic.
Yes.
So dear listener, or if you're watching this on YouTube, want to share your thoughts, we would love to hear what you thought about this video. And if you have any questions or comments, you can add it all. If you're listening on the podcast, then you can go to the YouTube channel and we have the video up there. You can add some comments on there. We'll be posting our upcoming episode topics and who will be typing if you want to type along with us. So thank you for listening to Objectively Typed with Versavia.
And Evelyn.
And until next time, bye.
Bye. And scene.
Hi, Tribe. I'm Versavia.
And I'm Evelyn. I fell asleep. That's going to be our side project, Shannon.
Love it.
Our Game of Thrones recap cast.
There you go. I'm Shannon.
Hey, Shannon.
Am I supposed to say my name?
No, you don't.
Okay.
You don't. Let's do that. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Just jump.
Okay.
You just start it.